watching it, I was like, oh my god, he's still got the ball, what's he doing? And then suddenly he just strikes it across the goal. Absolute rocket of a ball. Crazy scenes to watch. So good on him. Shows that he knows what he's doing. And I was like, oh my god, he's gonna lose it. Of course he's not. I need to back the boy. Welcome back to the Arsenal Humours podcast with me, Luce. I'm feeling good about today's episode. Today's actually the 4th episode of this podcast, which to me is just crazy that I've been doing this for a month. And I do feel like since I've started doing it, being a Gooner has been pretty good. I mean, obviously, as a Gooner, it's good to be a Gooner all the time. But you know what I mean is in the success. I mean, just look at this week. What I'm going to get into today's episode, I'm going to chat about the Women's Champions League game, which we won, and the Men's Premier League game, which we won. We're back. We are winning. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good as a Gooner. And yeah, I just keep smiling about it. So I'm really excited about today's episode, as well as obviously reflecting on this last week, which has been pretty good. I'm going to look ahead. Obviously, it's the women's international break right now. The men have just come back, so they've got 2 fixtures this week. So we've still got a lot to chat about in today's episode towards the end when I make my predictions, which so far, my predictions haven't been too far off. They're just, I've not got one bang on, and I can't wait for that moment, and hopefully it's in episode 4. We'll have to see. Well, episode 5, hopefully I can reveal if it's right or wrong. But obviously, to start off this episode, we're going to start off with a warm-up poll. This week, I was kind of struggling for ideas, so I thought, you know what, let's just go for a classic rivalry. Who do we not like seeing win? And it's sort of a comparison between the men's team and the women's team, showing where's your bias at. I just want to know. But before I spoil any more of it, let's just get straight into the episode. Okay, perfect. There is no messing about, no waffling today. Let's get straight into the warm-up poll question, which is, who would you rather see lose? Tottenham men or Chelsea women? Now this one, I'm pretty impressed with the votes. I've had 130 people vote. 55% said they'd rather see Tottenham men lose, and 45% said they'd rather see Chelsea women lose. That's a lot of votes, you know? Like, when I look at the other polls I've done recently, this is definitely the highest amount of people have voted, so I do appreciate it because it just makes the results seem more fair, more realistic judgment of the question. And I've got to say, I do understand why they're so close, because I think as Arsenal fans, for men or women, you don't want to see Spurs winning, men or women, and you don't want to see Chelsea winning, men or women. You just don't want to see those clubs winning as an Arsenal fan, first and foremost. As an Arsenal Humans fans, you would say, because, you know, it's the Arsenal Humans podcast. But I do kind of disagree with the poll results. For the first time, actually, I think this is 4 episodes in, finally disagree with what you guys are saying. I mean, for me, obviously, I want to see Tottenham men lose, but I want to see Chelsea women lose more. And I think that's partly because we don't really see Tottenham men win that much anyways, if I'm being completely honest. So obviously, apart from the City game, which I'm very thankful for them winning, which is actually very weird to say as an Arsenal fan. But I think for me, Chelsea women right now, with Sonia Bonpastor, they're literally unbeaten. 8 games in the WSL, 8 wins. And that's really scary, so I'd love to see them lose right now. But I think that's just judging based on my views completely in this moment. Obviously, if you look back at the derbies, North London derby for the men's side is crazy. Like, that's one of the best derbies, in my opinion, in the UK in English football, because it is so passionate. And what do we think of Tottenham? It's that sort of vibe, you know? Whereas for the women's side, Spurs, just, we're not there. We don't really have, obviously there's a rivalry and we hype it up, and like winning the North London derby last week, I was living my best life. Obviously I want us to do that, but I feel like the North London derby in the WSL isn't as important or as passionate, from the players, from the fans, from the staff, from coaching, every level, isn't as passionate and crucial, it appears, than when we play the London derby against Chelsea. So for me, I'm going to have to slightly disagree and say that, yeah, Chelsea women, I want to see them lose more. But I think that's just because right now they're more of a competitor, they're more of a threat, I'd say, than obviously Spurs are. So, you know, that is basically my view. It's quite a short little question today. I know a few of you in my last video have commented saying, how can we get involved in these warm-up polls? And literally, what I'm doing right now, just looking at my Instagram. If you just head over to my Instagram, it's lucechats.sport. Then on a Sunday or Monday, depending on how organised I am or what questions I think of pop into my head, whenever they pop into my head, there'll be a poll on my story. So if you just give me a follow, then you'll be notified. Obviously, you'll see on my story. And that is how you get involved. You guys have mentioned live streams, and that is something that I am considering. I'm not sure when I want to introduce that idea, because obviously this podcast has only been going for a month now, so I don't want to introduce too much or get too ahead of myself. But that's something I am considering. So I do see your comments. I am appreciating all of that. But yeah, thank you for getting involved with the poll. But anyways, moving away from the poll where we look at the losses, let's focus on this week and how we've got 2 wins out of 2. So let's get into that. Just a little disclaimer before I get into the topics reflecting on this week's football. I didn't actually watch either of the games live. I know what a fake Arsenal fan I am, but your girl was working for both shifts. For both games. So all of this is based off notifications I got on my phone, me looking back at the highlights, watching it, sort of gaining consensus from a few friends I've spoken to since. Pretty much that sort of vibe. I mean, obviously, I was on my phone getting sort of live reactions, but I didn't actually watch the game, and I was gutted that I couldn't go to the Emirates because I was working. But to be honest, I don't know if I missed out on too much, but we're going to get into that now. So we're going to start with the Arsenal game. Arsenal 1, Juventus 0, classic Arsenal scoreline. But I feel like we could have done a bit more. I hate to be a little bit negative on this, like straight out, but I just think the fact that if you look back to my last episode, when I said about the predictions for this week and what I was expecting, I said, oh yeah, I don't want to say anything like a 1-0. I know Arsenal can get a little bit complacent, but I'm not going to say 1-0. And I literally kept saying that. And I basically was like, obviously, if we can win away 4-0, then we can get even more goals at home because we'll be more comfy, we'll be more our fan base, which are all very valid facts. You know, I'm not going to completely invalidate myself. But the fact that we did win 1-0 is a bit humbling. I mean, we got the points we needed, we got the goal we needed to. And by the sounds of it, the first, 75, 80 minutes were pretty dull, not the most exciting. And then suddenly we came to life. And that's pretty much the whole highlight section. It was about I've watched a couple of different highlight videos. And the main one that I watched was about 8 to 10 minutes long. And most of it was from those last 20 minutes because that's where we were really pushing forwards. Don't get me wrong, throughout the whole game, Mornan was really going for it. And I think she is one of our best players, very determined, she's very much shown why she should be part of this squad, this starting squad, and why she should be playing, because if you look back to last season or even the season before, she was more of a question mark with, should we start her, should we start Blackstenia, should we start Russo, like who should we start up top? Obviously when Miedema was in there as well, it was those combinations, whereas now I feel like she's very much earned her spot in that starting squad. I mean, firstly, before we get into the game too much, we need to shout out Lena Hurtig. Yes, she did miss that header, and I was like, oh, I literally was sat there watching it going, nice. I don't know how she did it, but we can sit here and smile because she did then get the goal that secured us the 3 points for that game, so can't complain too much. Obviously, if it did end up 0-0 or we did end up somehow losing 1-0, then everyone would look back and go, right, that's disappointing, that's frustrating. But because we won, you know, we've got to be happy about it. I mean, she probably could have scored a hat-trick when she came on, and she's proving week on week why she is that super sub. She is that game changer. When she's coming on the pitch, she is creating that atmosphere. She's making a difference, and that's what we like to see, especially someone recovering from injury. Also, talking about injury, focusing on Leah Williamson, her form sort of dropped off a bit, and I know a lot of people commented on that. And then I was listening to Leanne Sanderson when she was on TalkSport saying how I think people have forgotten that she came back from an ACL injury, and I then felt a bit like, oh yeah, that is so true, because I think you almost just think, oh, they're back on the pitch, they're fully back to it, but it's the mental toll and everything. But I do feel like Williamson's getting comfy back on the pitch. The ball she's pinging out, I mean, for one of the chances that Hurtig had that she potentially should have slotted away, came from Leah Williamson's through ball, like right over a classic Leah Williamson ball, in my opinion. If you watch her consistently, you'll know exactly what I'm meaning, what I'm picturing. And I feel like it's just good to see these players coming to life. I do just feel like we're very good. We're very back on it. Since we've been with Slegers, so the whole of November, we have been unbeaten. And if that doesn't say give this woman the job, then I have no idea what does. Because when Jonas Edeval left, there were so many question marks, and that was going back. What date was it? I've got it written down. That was going back to the 15th of October, which is crazy because that is, it was like so long ago. It's over a month ago that he was still in charge, but he resigned then. And since then, I do feel like there's been change in both the players' mentalities, also the fans. I feel like we're all just getting back on board with the club as a whole and the team, which is really good to see. And obviously, by winning this 1-0, we are through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, which feels pretty good. I am very hopeful we're in the final eight, which if you look at last season, that didn't happen. I mean, we didn't even make it out of the group stage. So I feel like we're getting back there and we're having this momentum. Obviously, I don't want to get ahead of myself because I know that like Real Madrid, Lyon, Chelsea, Man City, they've all qualified as well, alongside a few other teams. But I think it is just great to see that we are up there, we are competing. And yes, the WSL, we might not have got to the start we wanted to, but now we are doing so well this season. I mean, unbeaten, that is pretty impressive. And yeah, just one final thing that I've put down is Van Domselaar. She's pulling off those crucial saves when you need it. I mean, it didn't really look like, from what I saw, it didn't really look like Juventus were really attacking us and threatening too much. But when they did, Van Domselaar cleaned up at the back and we went straight away again. And I think that was just really good to see from our keeper, very stable. Because I know when I first watched her at the Emirates against Everton, the second game of the season, I want to say, sat behind the goal and she looked a bit shaky. That was her first game playing for us there. Obviously, it was a draw, but then she pulled off that unreal save, tapped it over the bar, and I feel like every game since she's pretty much done that. So it's really good to see performances from a few standout players, but as a whole, the team cohesion, it's just going really well. It's really flowing. And that also reminds me of Arsenal men. Arteta's side is doing the exact same. I mean, the highlights that I saw with Forest, there were a lot of highlights. We had the ball, a lot of possession. Obviously, we got 3 goals. It was Arsenal 3, Forest 0 in the Premier League. And I predicted 3-1, so I'm not really too far off. I mean, we didn't really let Forest have many chances. They obviously got a goal, which was called offside really late on in the game. But apart from that, we didn't really let them get on the score sheet. So I'm very happy that my prediction was wrong for that reason. I was just very happy with the performance. It felt like good football to watch. I mean, Saka's first goal, watching it, I was like, oh my God, he's still got the ball. What's he doing? What's he doing? And then suddenly he just strikes it across the goal. Absolute rocket of a ball. Crazy scenes to watch. So good on him. Shows that he knows what he's doing. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to lose it. Of course he's not. I need to back the boy. I need to back the boy more because in my FPL team, he was my captain for like the whole of the first like 2-3 months of the season. And then suddenly I was like, no, let me put Fernandez. I don't know who told me that. My brain told me that. I don't know why my brain told me that. Because that was just not the right decision. Last week it was for Fernandez, this week it wasn't. Anyways, that is so irrelevant. Off on a tangent I am. But yeah, it was great to see Saka open the score sheet in that way, and I just think he's going strength to strength. I mean, he's a player that has always been spoken about and always been praised, and the only criticism I think people have ever found from him that I've heard of anyways, is that the game time is too much for him, that we want to play him too much, that his form ends up dropping a little bit because of that. But in my opinion, that's not really too much of a criticism, so very impressed with him and what he's doing. Partey's goal, just outside the box, he took one touch, opened his body up, struck it straight across goal, which I can't be the only one that didn't expect that. That was pretty impressive, especially from that distance. And then Ethan Nwaneri got the last goal to seal that 3-point win with the third goal. And he's back on the score sheet. It's so good to see the youngsters, which I don't even think we can consider him a youngster anymore. I think he's just earned that spot now, being a game changer in the game and a game changer in the first team now. He's doing so well, and it's really good to see that the next generation is positive for Arsenal and that we're in good hands. I mean, I think this game has shown how crucial the more senior players are, or the more experienced players, if you want to say it, in the team are, because having Ødegaard back in the squad since the international break has been so crucial, so pivotal for us. For me, Ødegaard is the most important player that Arsenal have. I know that when you try and compare him to Saka, when we don't have Saka playing, we do miss him. We do miss that player on the right wing that does exactly what Saka can do: control the ball, cut in, score. But Ødegaard, I think what he does off the ball is just as important what he does on the ball. And I don't want to say that we're becoming like City, where since they've lost Rodri, their form has dropped quite a bit. I mean, they've lost the last 5 games, which I need to get into this episode somehow. So there it is. It's in there once. Can't promise I won't say it again. But the fact that they relied so heavily on that player, and that is the reason behind it for so many people. I mean, I think it's a big factor. I don't know if it's the sole reason why City's form have dropped off, but I think we just need to make sure that we don't become like that with our form dipping and dropping. I do think that obviously Rice not playing as well, and Havertz, we didn't have our usual midfield three, but it was just so good to see Ødegaard back. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens next. Okay, so now we've looked at the games that have happened this week. What does this actually mean for us in terms of the league? I feel like I haven't really touched upon what the league tables look like, really. And obviously, this is my 4th episode in, so I feel like this is important to touch upon. For the Premier League, we are in 4th, and also for the WSL, we are in 4th position. So pretty good, pretty good. I mean, this is not a bad side. I'm feeling pretty good about us as a whole. I think for the WSL, it's not as impressive as it is for the Premier League, because for the WSL, there's less teams, so there's less interchangeable games. I mean, if you look at the Premier League, you literally could win one week and then suddenly you've moved up. Next week you draw and you've suddenly dropped somehow. So I think they are quite different leagues. Focusing on the Premier League, I mean, Liverpool, focusing on the Premier League, I mean, Liverpool are 8 points clear, which is kind of scary. I wouldn't have predicted that Liverpool would be this far ahead at the start of the season. I knew they'd be title contenders along with City and Arsenal, but I didn't know that they'd be flying this far ahead of us. And it's scary because we've got to shut them down. I mean, there are lots of question marks around Salah's future, as well as a few other players. So whilst that's up in the air, we've just got to make sure we capitalise on focusing on us and winning our games. City have also, as I've mentioned before, and I'm going to keep mentioning, lost their last 5 games, which is pretty poor from them. I mean, it's unheard of under Pep, but that is something that we need to really make the most of. Whilst he's in his losing streak, we need to really make sure we're winning the games, focusing on us. And the decider, I think, that could really change this title race will be when Liverpool face City. But for now, we're doing good. We're going to focus on us. And I think it's so far the season, like we're so early on in the season. So much time in the future to get these points, so I don't really think we need to stress right now. Focusing now on the WSL, I think being in 4th position is pretty good. I know obviously it's become a lot more competitive, so getting those points is tricky. And when you've got the likes of Chelsea, who are unbeaten already in the WSL, they've won 8 out of 8 games, which is crazy. Sonia Bonpastor, I fear her as an Arsenal fan. What she's doing with the team, what she's doing with the club, the fan base, I'm scared. I'm very scared. And I think for me, the only way that Chelsea will not win the WSL is if they fail. So in the nicest way possible, I need Chelsea to fail in order for Arsenal to stand a chance. I don't think City are as threatening. I don't think United are as threatening. I don't think Brighton, Spurs, any other team in the WSL for that title. So we've just got to make sure that Chelsea don't get it. So going back to the warm-up question, seeing Chelsea lose is something I'd love to see, but sadly, I don't think it's anytime soon. Anyways, that is the topics. Let's get on to next week, where we look to the men's side as they have 2 fixtures coming up, whilst the women have none, as it is the international break. Would you look at that? Time flies when you're having fun. We're already at the last segment of today's episode, which is the predictions. And to be fair, I quite like this part because I could say anything, and because it's not happened yet, it doesn't have to be right. So I literally could say the most outrageous things, which I don't think I really do. I think I'm not as delusional as some other fans could be in this moment. So, let's get into it anyways. So obviously we have the international break for the women's side, so they won't be playing this week. So we don't actually need to look at how they're going to do. I will be actually going to the Lionesses versus USA game on Saturday evening. I'm very excited to see how Emma Hayes does against Serena Wiegman. I just think it'll be exciting. There's a lot riding on that. But anyways, this is an Arsenal podcast, so we won't focus too much on that. But that is something I'm very excited to do. At the same time as that, we do have the men's Premier League game. But first, this podcast, or this episode, hopefully will be out just in time for the Sporting versus Arsenal game, which is happening tonight. My prediction is that it's going to be 1-1 draw. And I've got a few reasons for this. I've written them down. So if you're watching on YouTube, then you'll just see me staring at my phone for the next few moments. So enjoy. I think that it's going to be a pretty tight game at 8 p.m. tonight because it's an away fixture for Arsenal. Arsenal have won just one of their last 7 Champions League away games. And to make things even worse, we haven't actually scored in the last 4. So I think just hearing that is not too encouraging. Also, the fact that Sporting beat Man City 4-1 when they played. Obviously, don't get me wrong, City have gone for a little bit of a weird spell. It's a little bit of a weird patch for them. It's not like Pep's side at all. But that's still an impressive score. And Amorim did very well with them. The positive, though, however, that we can take is, as anyone that's currently watching the Premier League, like I am, Amorim is at United now. He's just drawn 1-1 to Ipswich, which is whatever score, a bit of a questionable score. But, that's what's happened. So I think the fact that they don't have Amorim anymore, who obviously won them 2 league wins, very impressive with them. Every Sporting fan you look at loves Amorim. So I think the fact that he's not there anymore, they've got a lot of adjusting to do. So it'll be interesting to see how they do without him. Also for us, Ødegaard is back. Rice and Havertz should be back in the lineup, which will be good. And on paper, yes, this is Arsenal's toughest remaining fixture in the league phase for the Champions League games. But that's just paper. So it's football. Anything can happen in football. So yes, I am not going too optimistic thinking, we're going to win this. But I am thinking that a 1-1 draw is pretty reasonable. I don't see why we couldn't score away from home. So anything can really happen. So that is my prediction, putting that out there, 1-1 draw. And to be fair, I'll be pretty happy with that. I just think then it means that our 2 home games that are coming up in the Champions League are going to be more crucial. So obviously a win would be amazing, but don't want to get too ahead of myself. Want to stay quite realistic. Then moving later on in the week, we will face West Ham in the Premier League on Saturday. For this one, it could go one of 2 ways. And let me tell you why that is. If you've seen my journey into sports media and what I've sort of been doing, I've been on AFTV a few times, and a couple of those times we lost to West Ham, which was I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that. But then the most recent time that I was on was back in February when we won 6-0 away from home. So we won 6-0 at West Ham, which is what this game is going to be. It's an away fixture for Arsenal. We won 6-0, and I think that speaks volumes. That says a lot. And I know that for a fact we have a lot of those players still in our squad and a lot of the same team cohesion that we saw for that game. I'm pretty sure we can see again for this game. It all sort of just depends how the start of the week goes for both us and West Ham. I mean, it is really hard to predict an exact score because it's just so tricky. I mean, if you look at the history of it, we should win this because we are better away from home apparently against West Ham. I mean, there's been some weird trend that they're almost like our bogey team. Like, we kind of either win by a lot or lose by a lot. So I feel like it could be quite extreme. But I want to stay a little bit more neutral and think Arsenal are very informed. West Ham's form has been shocking. When I say shocking, West Ham have been so poor recently, so inconsistent. I don't know what is going on. I mean, there's a lot going on. If you ask any West Ham fans, they give you a lot of reasons why it's gone a bit wrong for them. So yes, it's hard to predict, but I'm going to have to predict because I came up with this segment, so love myself for that. I'm going to go 2-1 to Arsenal. I am confident that we can win it. I'm not confident that it's going to be like a 6-0 win again. I hope I'm proven wrong. But I do think that Rice will score or get an assist. I think it's so in his nature. I mean, you saw him when we won 6-0. He scored, he got the assist. It is going back to your former club, and I do feel like that is something that just sort of happens, I feel like there's got to be something written somewhere that that's what footballers are meant to do when they go back to their former clubs. I don't know. I'm waffling now. But I do think that a 2-1 win is pretty realistic. I don't think that it's too extreme. We'll just see what happens. So they are my predictions for this upcoming week. 2 games. I'm predicting 1 draw and 1 win. Let me know down in the comments whether you agree or disagree with anything I've said this episode, but especially on my predictions, because I guess we're going to have to wait and see until next week whether they're correct or not. Right, that is the end of episode 4 of the Arsenal Humans podcast. I hope you liked it. I'm enjoying doing this. Please give me feedback, positive, negative, whatever. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this podcast. And also, if you're not following me on Instagram or any other socials already, make sure you do, because there's more content over there. If you like this, subscribe. You know the drill. Give it a go. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, give me a follow. On YouTube, subscribe. Forgot the order then when I was just doing it in my head. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone that's been voting in for the polls. Really helps to make this episode come alive from the get-go. And I appreciate you if you've listened or watched right until the end. So come on, you Gooners. Let's see what this week's got in store for us for the men's side, whilst the women have a bit of a break from playing together, obviously playing for their nations. But anyways, without me waffling on and on again, thank you for watching, and yeah, stay tuned for next Tuesday.